to learn more about the recommended dietary allowances, we have nutritionist Nindhita, Priscillia, or Tita. Thank you so much, Tita, for joining us this morning in the studio.
Happy National Nutrition Day.
Yes. I bet this is a very special day for you.
Yes, it is for nutritionists and dietitians.
Yes. So, when we talk about nutrition, what is exactly nutrition? And what kind of conversation that we don't have at the moment about nutrition? What are the important things that people should know about nutrition?
Okay, I think it's really important that we know nutrition every day. We need average daily intakes of nutrients from all sorts of nutrients. And so we have certain groups, food groups that we need to fulfill for sufficient nutritional intake on a daily basis. So if we talk about what is the particular aspect in nutrition that we are not much talked about, is probably the mental health part of nutrition.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, because actually when we consume food, I think it's really correlated with how much we think of it and what is the reason behind our food choices.
Do you mean like our relationship with food?
Yes,
okay.
Our relationship with food, our relationship with our body, and sometimes if we do not maintain that quite well, it may lead to development of disordered eating behaviors. So that's what we really need to prevent. But for recommended dietary allowances, what we need is to prevent the risk of deficiencies, because we have certain requirement that we need to maintain a sufficient level of nutritional requirement. And by following these guidelines, specifically for people in a given population, it might differ in terms of the characteristic of a population, that people in Southeast Asia probably have significant difference with the nutrition requirements from people in the US.
Right.
For example, like the differences.
Like probably the energy requirements on a daily basis, like for instance, Indonesia around 2,000 kilocalories, but probably people in the US probably to 2,500 kilocalories.
Why is there that discrepancy?
Because it's probably because of genetics.
Okay.
And the main significant reason,
Activities, perhaps, as well?
physical activities as well, with people in Indonesia. So basically, this guidelines is made by a basic survey based on our daily basis consumption.
Okay.
So it will be generated from a larger scale data that will represent the whole nation usually. So for RDA, we need to follow what your country suggests to you.
Right.
So usually the Minister of Health published the guidelines.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I'm wondering also, does food availability and what type of food is available in different countries play a factor into that as well? Because,
Yes.
like, for example, we eat a lot more rice here as opposed to like
We
the
do.
United States.
Yeah.
Does
I love
that
rice.
factor in?
Of course. So basically, the recommended dietary allowances is only suggest you to consume certain sources of nutrients, which you can find and substitute from any kind of food. So for instance, if we have in tropical countries, source of carbohydrates might be from white rice.
Okay.
But then when you live in the US, probably it will be much easier for you to find potatoes,
Correct.
Yeah.
or quinoa, or some types of other complex carbohydrates that maybe as the likings of those population. But for Indonesia, I think it would be much more sustainable as well for people in Indonesia to consume what is locally produced and what is locally available, and it will directly correlate it to the food prices, because the food prices are usually determined by the availability and the accessibility of food.
Of course. Quinoa is expensive.
Yeah, it is.
Because we
especially
don't
in
really...
Indonesia.
Do we produce quinoa in Indonesia?
I'm not sure, but I definitely know that shirataki is quite expensive because I've been eating that for the last little while.
I don't think we have the proper soil to grow quinoa in Indonesia. rather than white rice or in a rice field.
Yeah.
So
And
so you mentioned this recommended dietary allowance as actually published by the government.
Yes.
So let's say we know nothing about this. Where do we even start?
yeah.
Okay, so actually, when we want to implement it accurately, it will be quite challenging for general population.
Okay.
So if we need to, if we can access professional help or clinicians or help from nutritionists or dietitian, it will be so much easier because the recommended dietary allowances maybe differ by age, sex, level of physical activity, level of stress, and probably your sleep duration, and then your the prices of the food that has been transported. So it's really quite personalized, and it's quite hard to generalize the recommendation for all. But then when you have a guidance from clinicians or dietitian, nutritionists, you can have a more proper intake that is suitable for your needs and requirements.
Makes sense.
How do we know that we're undernourished?
Okay, that is actually a very good question. Actually, there's some clinical symptoms that may have shown if you're deficient in certain nutrient intakes. And usually when you're lacking of vitamin D, probably your nails can easily broken. And then when you're lacking of intake of vitamin C, maybe you got ulcers, and then there are other clinical symptoms. But then when these clinical symptoms have shown, it may have been quite severe.
Too late, like,
it's
yeah.
quite too late.
Right.
So in order to ensure that we maintain an adequate nutritional intake, I think it's really easy to follow the easier version of the RDA, which is the Eat Well Plate guidance. In Indonesia, we have Isi Piringku.
Okay.
So Isi Piringku is a guidance where we have a plate, and we have to make sure that half of our plate consists of fruits and vegetables.
Oh, like the pie chart
Yeah.
thing. Yes, all right.
And then the chart, the pie chart thing, and the half of it are fruits and vegetables, and quarter of it can contain carbohydrates. And we can choose a much healthier option, probably like complex carbohydrates. And then a quarter rest of it, probably a source of animal-based protein,
Yes.
and then plant-based protein. But for people in Indonesia, actually National Nutrition Day has
Isi piringku.
yes.
My plate looks somewhat similar. But
Yes.
it's going to look, it doesn't have to look exactly like that.
It
gives you a
doesn't
bit
have
of a
to.
guidance, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you have to have a little bit of everything that you see there. If you can explain, you have sayuran, which is vegetables, the
Yeah.
green.
The
The
green.
lighter green is fruits.
Fruit.
What's lauk pau?
It's
Low
a
it's
protein.
like animal-based
Okay,
protein,
right,
and
right.
both animal-based and plant-based.
That's about a quarter.
Yeah.
You're right there.
And this one is the carbs.
Yes, the carbs. But then for people who are obese, it will
Yeah.
be adjusted. So the carbs will be a quarter.
Okay.
And then the animal-based and plant-based proteins would be a quarter as well.
Right.
So
Right.
Almost half of that basically
Yeah.
is fiber as well.
Yeah.
So that'd be
Indeed.
good for somebody trying to
So
lose weight.
97% of Indonesian food consumption usually are lacking of fruits and vegetables.
I can't believe it.
Wow, shocking to
Hang
you.
on, I can't believe it.
What a shocker.
How come?
I know. So because on a daily basis we need around 5 to 6 portions of fruits and vegetables, which is quite a lot. And
But we have such an abundance of it in Indonesia.
That's what I'm
I
saying.
know.
Aw.
And I think it's because of the food culture as well. Because in Indonesia, people tend to consume probably higher
Carbs.
consumption of carbs, salts from frying your
It's
food.
easier to get fried foods on the roadside
Yes.
rather than preparing a salad or
Maybe
something.
compared to people in the U.S., people in the U.S. are more likely to consume salad without using any dressing.
Correct.
But in Indonesia, we tend to like make it in gulai or put it in a bit
Saus kacang,
Yes, saus
peanut
kacang,
sauce.
peanut
Milk,
sauce,
yeah.
coconut milk,
Yeah.
which may contain higher fat.
Yeah.
Right. And we only sometimes are selective when you say, hey, I had my veggies for today. Yeah, but you had a bowl of coconut milk with that. You never even counted.
It's so funny though, even like with salads, usually I would have salads with no dressing.
Oh, I would squirt some lemon on it.
Right,
You know, like
right.
that's,
Just to make it fresh.
Olive
Right.
oil.
Yeah.
You can use olive oil, but
yeah.
only a teaspoon, a small teaspoon.
Okay, so let's dive a little deeper and go into a topic that I don't even like doing. In fact, I don't do it at all. Some people call it counting your macros or counting your
Okay.
calories, but
Oh, I don't
we
like that.
mentioned, I know, but we do have to touch upon it. 2,100 calories is recommended. How do we know we are on track or we're exceeding that or we're under that? And
Okay.
without having to make it such a chore, because it is a bit of a chore,
It
isn't it,
is.
to try to remember everything you ate. And some people
Yeah.
even write it down. I can't
Yeah.
even bother doing. I estimate. That's what I do.
Because,
I know.
because I used to be anorexic,
Okay.
Tita. So it's like I understand this sort of like crazy obsession in
Really?
counting and everything. It can drive people towards that direction, right? If they just obsess about
Yes.
like, how much calorie do I
Exactly.
need right now? Do I eat and stuff?
Yes. So, in terms of eating behavior perspective, it is quite not recommended to really weigh your food accurately.
Yeah.
So it might lead to some certain of obsession, as you said, towards this food weighing and calorie counting that might lead to maybe when you step on a scale and then you see all these numbers that might triggers you and some of disordered eating behaviors. So as you said, when you experience anorexia nervosa, especially eating disorders, it is very dangerous for you to really count this. That's why, as you said, when we need to estimate, it's really applicable on a daily basis for general population.
It's good enough.
It's good enough rather than you're weighing all of your calories
goodness.
or
Gotta
all
carry a
your.
scale with you.
I don't carry a scale.
Right.
There are people who
Yeah,
actually
it is
carry
unbelievable,
food
yeah.
scales.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
very consuming, no
It's
pun
very,
intended.
very-
But yeah, it takes up so much of your time as well.
It's very consuming, and then some people may lead to depression and anxiety as well. And
Especially when you don't hit those targets, right?
Yeah.
Like you realize, oh, I failed.
Yeah.
Whereas when you estimate, yeah, you kind of guess a little more one day, a little less another.
And what we need to remind ourselves is that what matters is what we consume constantly.
Okay.
But if we eat a slight deficiency in a meal or in a day, it would break your health suddenly. So
Right.
what matters is what we consume constantly.
I've had a tip that I have applied, but tell me if it's true, because my friends have suggested this to me, and they were nutritionists as well. Don't count daily, but count weekly. If you want to count, like,
How
because
do you
let's say
do
if you
that?
go over, like, well, because you estimate in a week, if you have, let's say you need 2,000 calories a day, then you basically need 14,000 a week. And if you look at it that way, if you overeat on a daily basis, you're going to far exceed that. But if you are around that target for the week, then you're not really thinking about it on a daily basis
Okay,
and trying to hit your target every day.
Right.
I get what you mean. Yeah,
know what I mean? Like
you
that.
can apply it like that,
Okay.
but it would be much easier. So we have in Indonesia in our guidelines, angka kecukupan gizi or recommended dietary allowances. We have URT or ukuran rumah tangga or serving sizes. That is the estimation of the
Oh, that will help
recommended
you
diet.
plug in the numbers then.
So it will so much easier and it will be so much less triggering for
Right.
people with certain eating behaviors
Yeah.
because we only use estimation instead of the numbers.
Got it.
Yeah.
Because the numbers what triggers people, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's
yeah.
actually talk, speaking of numbers, let's talk more numbers. Because a lot of people equate healthy eating to high prices. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Healthy food is always more expensive.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah,
you know, people sometimes think, oh, healthy food means imported ingredients
Like
as well.
quinoa.
But today, we're going to share with you some local foods that are just as nutritious, in fact, can be cheaper. So
Yes.
let's shift this conversation over to the desk. All right.
Wow,
Now,
I see salmon here.
Yeah.
I see
So
kacang
on the
polong
front here,
or
we
peas.
have the quote-unquote more expensive choices that people like to avoid.
Yeah.
What do we have here? We'll start.
Kiwi.
Yeah, so especially in Indonesia and Southeast Asia or tropical countries,
Yeah.
probably some of these food sources
Yeah.
can be quite expensive because it is
Yes.
imported.
Yes.
As I said previously, that food prices may be determined by accessibility and availability
Correct.
of foods.
Yeah.
So we have here kiwi, which contains of rich vitamin C.
Yes.
But then we also have the substitution for those who live in tropical countries, probably.
Yeah.
So we have guava.
Oh, guava. So
That's jambu
Guava
biji.
is a great, yes, jambu biji in Indonesia.
Okay.
So,
guava.
this contains a very great antioxidant and vitamin C. So
Okay.
it's when you have, when you need, well, you can eat it while you're in the studio. But yeah, instead of buying kiwi, which is quite expensive.
And most obviously imported. So
Imported.
I've got the prices to share with you.
Okay.
How much
Kiwi
is it?
ranges around 60 to 150,000 rupees per kilo,
That's
while
expensive.
guava ranges anywhere from 10 to 20,000.
Oh,
there you
my.
go. About 1/5 of the price.
And I actually like the taste of guava better. Maybe I'm Indonesian.
Yes,
Yeah, you
because
got
it's
that.
tropical fruits.
Okay.
It's more enjoyable for people who live in tropical countries.
All right, what
So the next
Peas,
one, we
green
have
peas.
peas.
Okay.
And the substitution is tempeh.
Oh,
so
nice.
it's pretty straightforward. So it's plant-based protein.
Keep trying all of the
This one is
local stuff.
tempeh. So it's locally produced, and we might use a bit of food technology technique
Right.
in order to make tempeh.
Right.
But then it's really easy to make it in Indonesia
Right.
because it is quite accessible and people grow it and produce locally.
Staple of an Indonesian dish, by the way.
Absolutely.
It's a
Yeah.
national treasure, our tempeh. By the
National
way,
treasure.
a lot of people are living this vegan lifestyle and they're constantly saying pea protein, pea protein. But tempeh, by the way, is a great source of protein. I have a lot of friends at the gym that are consuming tempeh every day.
I know. And then for people in Indonesia who are below the poverty line,
Yes.
it's usually recommended for them to consume plant-based protein
Okay.
such as tempeh because
Right.
it's affordable.
Let me share the price. The kilo of green peas can cost anywhere from 30 to 50,000 rupiahs, while tempeh ranges from 5 to 10,000
That's
rupiahs
awesome.
per kilo.
That's awesome.
Then here we have salmon, right?
Right.
Yes,
What's
salmon.
the substitute?
The substitute is ikan kembung or
Okay.
mackerel.
Mackerel.
Yeah,
that's
mackerel.
right. Okay.
So in Indonesia, it is much cheaper to consume and buy this kind of fish rather than buying imported salmon that might cost a lot. And some people think that, okay, I got this omega-3 sources only for salmon.
Right, we hear that.
But then we forgot that we have a locally based
Ikan kembung. It's
ikan
called.
kembung.
So,
it's called.
salmon, no surprise here, 200 to 350,000 rupiahs per kilo. I know, I can feel the crunch myself when I go to the grocery store. This ikan kembung is anywhere from 40 to 60,000 rupiah. However, let me ask you about, again, the protein levels. Would each kind of like amount, the same amount from salmon, could you get the same amount of protein from ikan kembung?
So when it comes to protein, there are some essential and non-essential amino acid.
Okay.
So we can get those from any kinds of animal-based proteins. Basically, when we substitute salmon to mackerel, probably when we choose fish rather than poultry or meat, we tend to use other source of protein more than just protein in that nutrient. So when we choose salmon, we got protein, we got omega-3, but then when we choose mackerel, we also got protein and higher richness in omega-3.
Right.
So in both are rich in omega-3. So the message here is like it doesn't have to be expensive in order to consume something nutritious.
Right.
Yes.
So it, especially in a very less sourceful hospitals, probably, and the government only have certain allowances budgets for nutritionists to develop some meal plans, and in order to access nutrition for all, so it will be equal for all. A socioeconomic status, and we need to find, as a nutritionist and dietitian, we need to creatively find and modify recipes to find substitution for this source of nutrients.
Good point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get ikan kembung. Finally.
What do you got here?
quinoa and potatoes.
Quinoa and potatoes. So,
Okay. Wow, I wouldn't think those two would be substituted for each other.
so both are complex carbohydrates.
Right.
So, but quinoa contains plant-based protein as well.
Okay.
So maybe some source of protein you can get from quinoa as well, but then you can also get other sources of proteins from other source of
Right,
food.
the rest of your plate.
So the rest of my
Correct.
plate.
Gotcha.
So as we if you remember the isi piringku, that we need to involve not only fruit and vegetables, but also other protein, source of proteins. But when we have this potato, it is locally produced in Indonesia.
Right.
It is probably in other areas of Southeast Asia as well.
Yes.
And it's really cheap, and you can consume like this much, and it equal to like this bowl of quinoa, which may cost more
How much does
than.
it cost?
Well, let me share that with you. 70 to 120,000 rupees per
Well,
kilogram
yeah,
for
that's
quinoa,
something.
while potatoes range anywhere from 18 to 35,000 rupiah per kilogram.
I see, and for some reason, I feel that potatoes are much more filling
So
than
you,
quinoa,
so you won't have to eat as
right?
much.
Exactly, so
Yeah.
you don't have to eat as much. And also, the theme of this year's National Nutrition Day actually focuses on animal protein.
Yeah, animal-based proteins to promote, to eradicate stunting in Indonesia, which is a long battle that we health professional has fighting against in Indonesia. So we are encouraging people to consume more animal-based protein, especially in the suburban and remote area. That's why tempeh is actually very encouraged, because it's even though it's
But
a
that's
plant-based,
plant-based
even though it's a plant-based, but it's affordable.
Yeah.
Right.
Not everything is affordable.
Not everyone can afford beef
Not
or
everyone
chicken.
can afford
Right.
fish.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's also, the disruption in the supply chain and the system,
Yes.
and also the COVID pandemic becomes the disruption in imposing the food prices.
Right. So
Yeah.
by the way, also we spoke a little bit before we came on air that this is a national program to kind of make this awareness campaign to kids throughout schools as
Yes.
well, because there has been a surge in like veganism and vegetarianism that people are starting to be scared of animal protein. So I'm glad that
Yes.
this is being communicated with children. Not a
Yeah.
problem in my household, but obviously perhaps other households.
No,
as
but
well.
it's actually true, and it goes back to what you said earlier, Tita, that each person actually has different needs, has different nutritional needs. Because I was vegetarian for about almost 3 years, some years ago, and I found myself losing a lot of weight. Even though I felt fine, but I was losing a lot of weight, and I thought, well, this is not quite right for my body. Maybe, mostly, I can be plant-based with the occasional eating fish or eating even steak like once a month or once every 2 months, and chicken, just to bulk myself up a little bit.
And it
I
worked.
feel okay.
There
It
you go.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget, if you're vegan, to consume additional supplement, because there are some amino acid essentials that you can get from plant-based protein.
Yes.
So what you
B12
said
is it?
yes, B12, iron, and then when you're engaged in a disordered eating behavior as well, sometimes you have this falsifying reasonings for you to engage in veganism.
Right.
So you need to be really careful.
Be aware
Yeah,
of
be aware
what's
of
the motivation.
What's the motive behind your food choices.
Nindhita, thank you so much. We know you've got a long day ahead of you, so we don't want to keep you too long. But once again, happy National Nutrition Day.
Thank you very
so
much.
for sharing
Thank you,
all of
everyone.
this information that I'm sure our viewers found insightful.
Yes, indeed, and we still have more interesting stories from Indonesia after the break, so stay here on the C Morning Show only on C Today. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Tita.
Thank
That
you
was
so
excellent.
much.
Sorry to keep you.